Abdullah turned to Lu Zhongtong and said, "The dam is a very long-term issue. We've been filing lawsuits in court all along, and only if we win legally can we proceed with the next step of resistance. Today's main topic is the new construction crew that's appeared on the mountain." And Jing exchanged a glance with Lu Zhongtong and let Abdullah continue. "A month ago, David Group's convoy came back up the mountain again, and recently there have been constant new convoys coming and going. We have no idea what they're doing. The town has also received official permits from the state and the police. I'm certain this is the result of bribery. They're digging and blasting here, and when our villagers went to ask them questions, no one came out to talk. Outside the construction perimeter, armed guards are stationed." Abdullah walked over to the map and pointed to the construction site. And Jing and Lu Zhongtong both froze. The spot was exactly the dragon's lair that Lu Zhongtong and Liang had independently identified. Abdullah couldn't possibly know Feng Shui, and Liang had never been involved in David Group's overseas projects. For them to pinpoint the dragon's lair from thousands of miles away in the central mountain range was absolutely no coincidence. And Liang and Li Xiaoxin were already tracking Matvei. Barring any unforeseen events, Matvei's destination was clearly the dragon's lair. Now the biggest question was, what was David Group trying to do by building at the dragon's lair? The crowd's emotions grew increasingly agitated. Even Raman, the elderly town chief, had changed his stance. He now believed his eldest son's death was inevitably linked to the dam's commencement, an American plot to exterminate the Malay people. All those present were elders from the town's major clans. Once they settled on this conspiracy theory, their plan for tomorrow immediately unified. Abdullah decisively declared that at dawn the next day, they would march up the mountain, storm David Group's construction site, occupy the area, and halt all activities until the company and state officials yielded to Kuba Town's demands, expelling David Group and guaranteeing no future destruction of the mountain forests. Liu Zhongtang and Anjing volunteered to assist the villagers' occupation plan. Both knew that with David Group's armed guards in place, 2 people climbing the mountain alone versus an entire village made all the difference. After the meeting, the villagers dispersed to their homes. There still weren't enough guest rooms, so Anjing and Lu Zhongtang shared one. Anjing sat on the bed while Lu Zhongtang asked a servant for a mat, which he laid on the floor. He then meticulously changed into checkered pajamas and sat upright and composed in a chair. Kuko had once been a stray dog. Lu Zhongtang was the first to take it in and train it, sleeping and eating alongside it during training. Thus, Kuko was especially fond of him and would leap onto him whenever it saw him. In the still room, the 2 humans stared awkwardly at each other while Kuko crouched on Lu Zhongtang's lap, licking his face repeatedly with its tongue. "Get some rest early," Lu Zhongtang said. "Going up the mountain tomorrow could be dangerous. We need to conserve our energy." And Jing frowned as she looked at his freshly shaved jawline, sharply outlined in the lamplight. Yet this clean-cut, handsome Liu Zhongtang felt strangely unfamiliar. She missed the old rough face that now seemed so endearing in memory. She thought that if she just closed her eyes and listened to his voice, she might quickly regain the feeling of him as the Hongmen elder she knew. So she said, "Then turn off the light and sleep. Good night." With that, and Jing pulled the blanket over herself and lay down. "Aren't you supposed to do scripture reading and evening prayers before bed?" Oh, and Jing, halfway into lying down, paused midair and stiffly sat back up. "Ah, yes, of course. Let's read scripture for half an hour tonight. Brother Liu will lead." And Jing adjusted her nun's habit and knelt on the bed. Liu Zhongtang also knelt on his pillow and casually opened the Bible. Soon the room filled with clear, rhythmic chanting. "See, winter is past. The rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land." And Jing clasped her hands before her chest, bowed her head, and closed her eyes, listening to Lu Zhongtang's low, gentle voice. But she only felt drowsy and inwardly criticized his stubborn adherence to routine. She'd been away from the convent for weeks now. Though she tried to follow religious rules when possible, constant travel forced her to adapt. In a situation like this, practicality should come first. Why bother with evening prayers? She took a quiet breath and suppressed a silent yawn as Lu Zhongtang's endless recitation continued. "The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, my darling. Come, my beautiful one." And Jing muttered inwardly, "What on earth is this?" She cracked one eye open to peek at Liu Zhongtang, then quickly shut it again. On her retina lingered an image. A tall man in pajamas, kneeling obediently under the dim yellow lamp, carefully cradling a pocket-sized Bible as if holding a delicate lily. She frowned slightly. "Lily. Wait, that's exactly what the next verse mentions." Liu Zhongtang's voice grew softer. He too began to feel uneasy reading this passage, yet it was still scripture. This chapter from the Song of Songs was King Solomon's finest poetry. The priest had explained that the love between lovers symbolized Christ's relationship with the church. He quickly glanced up at Anjing, the petite lovely nun kneeling on the bed like a pure jade sculpture, who showed no objection to his reading. Of course, Sister Jing understood it was merely allegorical. He must be overthinking things. Reassuring himself, Liu Zhongtang bravely continued, "My beloved is mine, and I am his. He grazes among the lilies. Before the cool of the day and the shadows flee, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged hills." And Jing knew this passage well. The Song of Songs was the Bible's most romantic and mysterious poem. with unnamed protagonists, and its inclusion in sacred scripture had sparked debate for centuries, yet the church had never altered a word. Her favorite modern interpretation was that King Solomon transformed himself into a magnificent white bull to seduce the beautiful Shulamite woman, reciting this love poem beside her. She'd never dared tell anyone she liked this interpretation, let alone admit she'd once imagined such romance happening to her, and that she might not resist the temptation. Her lips moved softly as she joined Lu Zhongtang in reciting, "On my bed at night I sought the one my soul loves, I sought him but did not find him." And Jing began to feel that the Song of Songs was utterly unsuitable for evening prayer. In fact, no one in the convent ever used this poem for devotion. Everyone seemed to avoid it deliberately or unconsciously. Whenever someone happened to come across it while reading scripture, they'd quickly flip to the next chapter without offering any explanation. Could it be that Lu Zhongtang, who looked so solemn and upright, had intentionally chosen this passage to read aloud? She opened one eye slightly and glanced at Lu Zhongtang. The big man sat with his broad shoulders squared, eyes fixed straight ahead as he recited, "My beloved, how beautiful you are. How beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down from Mount Gilead." And Jing rolled her eyes. Seeing Lu Zhongtang's expression of pure righteousness left her oddly disappointed. That Guan Yu-like aura he radiated now felt nothing like what she'd hoped for. This wasn't King Solomon reciting love poetry. It was more like Guan Yu reading the spring and autumn annals by moonlight. His tone made her deeply uncomfortable, yet just as the Roman Catholic Church had never removed the Song of Songs from the Bible, she hadn't asked him to stop either. The Bible, she told herself inwardly, must be listened to with faith in God. Lu Zhongtang read stiffly, but Sister Jing hadn't asked him to switch passages. If he changed it on his own now, it might seem suspicious as if he had ulterior motives. He started disliking himself a little. Why did he have to open right to the Song of Songs without checking first? Now he had no choice but to press on, keeping a straight face. "Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely." He swallowed hard. The room was so quiet that the gulp seemed audible even to Jing, but she gave no reaction, remaining still as a sacred jade statue on the bed. "Your cheeks behind your veil are like halves of a pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built like a fortress." Both of them were nearly driven mad. They exchanged a glance and saw each other's faces frozen in rigid embarrassment, flushed crimson under the lamplight. The air in the room felt as cold and solid as marble, yet sweat poured down their faces and bodies. Lu Zhongtang dared not look at Jing. He lowered his head to the Bible and continued in a hoarse, strained voice. "Your two breasts are like twin fawns, twins of a gazelle, feeding among the lilies, before the cool evening breeze comes, before the shadows flee." And Jing instinctively pressed her arms tightly against her chest. Her heart pounded violently and deliciously. She cleared her throat loudly and declared, "Ahem, amen, thank you God, let's get some sleep, turn off the light." They both made a large sign of the cross over their chests, and Jing yanked the bedsheet over her head and lay perfectly still. The light went out. In the darkness, Lu Zhongtang could be heard lowering himself onto the floor and exhaling a long, slow breath. On Li Shoshan's wrist was a satellite tracker the size of a watch. On its dim blue fluorescent display, two green dots blinked intermittently, one to the north, Matvei, the other trailing closely from the south, Unliang. She glanced back. Behind her loomed a moss-covered cliff, and Lang was descending hand over hand down thick vines, climbing barehanded step by careful step. Dressed head to toe in olive green tactical gear, her long hair braided into a damp plait resting against her back, she stood firmly on a branch. Rain clouds drifted past on the cold wind. Water fell from above, rose from below, and seeped from within. This was the tropical rainforest's winter, the season of endless rain that lasted 3 months without pause. At a time like this, anyone would want to stay home with someone they loved, sipping coffee, watching TV, sharing quiet conversation. But Li Shaoxian had never known such a moment. Her missions knew no distinction between heat and cold, summer or winter. Around her there were only targets, tools, weapons, shifting identities, and orders that had to be fulfilled. Still, this situation wasn't all bad. Being near Lang, or even just watching him from afar, felt like happiness to her. His safety weighed on her more than anything ever had. She'd just descended that same cliff herself. Though she'd used the best climbing rope and leapt with precision, she knew exactly how slick those rocks were. A fall from 100 meters would be fatal. This man, prone to daydreams, was easily hypnotized. He adored shallow Broadway jazz and East Asian female pop stars, because apparently he'd never felt sexual attraction toward Western women. Months ago, when she'd first read Anne Lang's file, she'd thought it absurd to assign her, a highly trained operative, to deal with such a lowbrow, psychologically flawed fool. Back then, she'd believed shooting him dead would have been cleaner and kinder. But today, her view had changed completely. In truth, it had begun changing the moment she met him. When the organization sent an angel to shoot her, the plan was precise. A high-velocity round aimed just below her left collarbone, to wound her enough to stage a rescue and infiltrate the in-household through sympathy. But Liang had thrown himself in front of her, shielding her with his own body. She would never forget that motion. When she'd lunged toward him from the bus, he turned instantly, without hesitation, without calculation, as if the movement had been pre-programmed. That split-second sacrifice couldn't have been based on knowing he wore top-grade body armor. He couldn't have known the bullet wouldn't shatter his skull. It was pure reflex. And if only a fool would take a bullet for someone else, then fools must be the most lovable creatures on earth. From that moment on, Li Shaoxin knew An Liang was someone she could truly rely on. No matter who she really was, she believed he would never abandon her. Now, she was taking a risk, deliberately revealing her true identity to Liang. She'd once assumed her life would end this way, and that it wouldn't last long. All the angels in the organization were girls in their teens or early 20s, not because youth was required but because the mortality rate was so high. If an angel vanished one day, no one spoke of her again. She simply ceased to exist. Though Li Xiaoxin was barely out of university, she was already the most senior member among the angels. Statistically, she'd long accepted that death could come at any moment. She knew that even if she didn't die on a mission, the organization wouldn't let her live much longer. Its power was absolute. Her only chance at survival was to keep completing assignments. The moment she stopped, she'd be executed. But Liang had given her hope. There were many brilliant, courageous people in the world, but only one who'd reflexively take a bullet for her. She wanted Liang to gradually accept who she really was. She wanted to try being honest for once. More importantly, Li Xiaoxian had begun to believe Liang could help her change her fate, because he was already changing his own and succeeding step by step. Li Xiaoxian knew her identity was beginning to be exposed, but the organization hadn't realized it yet. She felt she still had everything under control. As long as Liang could break the organization's plan through her, many things would turn around. Her original mission was to track Matvei, lure Liang into following along with her, observe Matvei's every move, and also gauge Liang's thoughts and reactions regarding Matvei and the entire David group test incident. But Liang's hacking skills were astonishing. Even the organization was surprised. He'd somehow learned Matvei's movements at the same time they did, and took the initiative to tail him himself. The organization liked this outcome, and Li Xiaoxin liked it even more. Only someone as capable as Liang could help her fulfill her wish. She didn't care at all where Matvei went. With the organization's satellite tracking, she could always catch up to him. Right now, all she cared about was whether Liang could safely descend the cliff. No matter how strong he was physically, he still had to defy the death fate had assigned him. If this moment was truly his destined time to die, the vine in his hand would snap, and he'd plummet from the cliff. The last thing she heard through the bug was Liang saying, "I'll go alone. Don't let Xiaoxian take any risks." She kept replaying his voice carefully in her mind. Every time she reached that line, warmth surged in her chest. But she dared not dwell on it too long. It was like a little girl hoarding a precious piece of candy wrapped in her handkerchief, only sneaking a taste when no one was looking. Stay calm, stay calm. Li Xiaoxin repeated this to herself over and over. Her body temperature, blood pressure, pulse, even her consciousness and memories, all were monitored by the organization. Any significant emotional fluctuation would draw their attention. She slowed her breathing, watching as Liang reached the bottom of the cliff. Then she turned and headed toward Matvei's direction, occasionally slashing branches with her machete to leave clear trail marks so Liang could easily follow her path. Tracking Matvei posed no difficulty for her. She kept him constantly in view through a high-powered electronic telescope, instantly transmitting the recorded footage back to the organization. Matvei wore full mountaineering gear, though his equipment consisted mostly of geological tools, small hammers, trowels, and standard wilderness survival gear, a water filter, mini gas stove, canned food, rope, lantern and tent, all neatly packed. He maintained strict routines, sticking to 3 meals a day and 8 hours of rest while moving through the jungle. Li Xiaoxian had examined the remnants he left behind. He was a true environmentalist. Aside from human waste, he carried everything else back in his pack. Even his waste was carefully buried in dug pits. Adhering strictly to the hiker's code, leave nothing behind but footprints. At one of Matvei's campsites, Li Xiaoxian finally found a crumpled vegetable can label on the ground. It had been soaked in water and fallen off. From this tiny detail, she knew her plan was falling into place. She's one of yours too. She's not part of the organization. But the things you want to know, we want to know them as well. And Liang was slightly surprised, though not by Elena's identity. Seriously, so your organization doesn't even know about Lirock Valley. That's why we decided to bring you in on the investigation. Of course, there are other reasons I can't tell you. The fact that even this mysterious organization needed Liang's help flattered his ego. Feeling pleased, he asked another question. Will you tell me how David died? You look like a ghost, so black. I'll sue you for racial discrimination in court at dawn tomorrow. The term blackie has been legally defined as a discriminatory slur. Daniel didn't even glance at Liang typing away on another computer while bantering back. And your office lighting is inadequate. I'll sue you for employee abuse too. Office lights should be bright enough to clearly see the face of a pure-blooded black person. Shit. Liang muttered silently. Just then, the desk phone rang. Shen Weiguo answered, recognized it was from the tech department, and immediately switched on speakerphone so everyone in the office could hear the report. Earlier, Liang had brought to Beijing the little alarm clock Li Xiaoxin had given him during their operation at the Gumu village base in Malaysia. One unit went straight to Shen Weiguo for disassembly and analysis. The other, retrieved by Cuckoo, was couriered to New York and handed to Daniel. With the combined technical might of both Chinese and American teams, they were confident they could unravel the mystery of this strange weapon. According to the tech team's report, it was an ultra-high-power radiation emitter. At close range, it caused severe brain damage in humans. At longer distances, it dulled neural perception, with immediate symptoms including unconsciousness. Such effects didn't require cutting-edge technology, but what baffled the team was the unusually sophisticated remote fine-tuning mechanism inside the device. This meant it could target specific brainwave frequencies for attack. And Liang lifted his teacup saucer and held it over his head as he explained. That's exactly how David died. They mounted one emitter on the ceiling of the 23rd floor conference room and another on the roof of the renovation unit directly below on the 22nd floor, sandwiching David's seat vertically. During the meeting, they emitted radiation waves tuned precisely to his brainwave frequency. Everyone else in the room was unaffected, but David suffered massive cerebral trauma, leading to a fatal brain hemorrhage. The councilman's death followed the same principle. And Jing asked, but the councilman died of cerebral edema and went insane. Different from David's case? Sheng Weiguo replied. Probably because the killer didn't know exactly where the councilman would sit, so they used a stronger, broader frequency. That's why it was more brutal. On the screen, Daniel called out to Liang. Yoho Liang, I've dug up Nagayoshi Rentaro's background. His grandfather was Nagato Matao, who served as president of the University of Tokyo in 1934. His father, Nagato Toshinobu, was a renowned philosophy scholar at the same university. Rentaro himself also has deep ties to the University of Tokyo. He headed the Faculty of Engineering's Research Institute 10 years ago before resigning and disappearing. And Liang scrolled through the documents Daniel sent over. A small photo of Nagayoshi Rentaro appeared on screen, a young, sharp-looking man with spiky short hair that radiated intense energy. And Liang said to Daniel, I need to find him. I need his family details, address, and his parents' whereabouts. Can you hack into the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department? Oh, Daniel groaned dramatically. Half the programs the Japanese write are in Japanese. It's all meant for Japanese eyes, don't joke around. Even if I got into their database, staring at a sky full of kanji, I wouldn't know what to search for. Worthless. What? I said you're worthless. What happened to my money? And Liang had handed over all his private savings to Daniel to trade in the financial markets. Daniel quickly multiplied that small sum by 5, leaving Liang overjoyed. Now whenever he saw Daniel, he saw stacks of US dollars, the British pound crashed. Huh? And Liang immediately felt his mouth go dry, but Daniel just chuckled wickedly. On the video screen, all Liang could see was a large dark shadow shaking uncontrollably. Smugly, Daniel said, I went short on it instead, and now I've made another 5 times profit, but I haven't closed the position yet. So it's only paper profit. Oh, but I'm worthless. I can't even calculate the right exit price. Liang, why don't you take a look at the charts yourself when you have time? No. And Liang immediately cut off Daniel's self-deprecating talk. Sincerely, he said, you're the best, my dear Dada. You're the best trader there is. You're not worthless. I'm not worthless, pleading sweetly, and Liang added. Right, my friend. Do you like any Chinese gifts? I'll bring you something special. After calming Daniel down, An Liang turned right away to An Jing and said, Sister Jing, since the Japanese haven't contacted us yet, they probably aren't after ransom. They're targeting Sister Yun herself, so waiting here is useless. We need to act first. It's time for you to step up again. Cast a divination to locate Sister Yun. His mother's safety was paramount. An Jing didn't dare cast a reading carelessly. She took pen and paper and walked into a small conference room alone, closing the door behind her. She closed her eyes and prayed to God. This prayer served the same purpose as the ancient Chinese rituals of burning incense and bathing. It sharpened her focus and ensured the accuracy of the divination. A moment later, she emerged holding a sheet of paper. Everyone looked at read, Wu Wang transforming into Sui. As soon as An Liang and Lu Zhongtong saw the hexagram, they both exclaimed in unison, Japan? And Jing explained, Tokyo, Japan, northwest of the Imperial Palace. An Liang immediately pulled up a map of Japan on his computer. Lu Zhongtong asked, Wu Wang means unexpected disaster, clearly an ominous hexagram. And the lower trigram which indicates direction is Zhen, representing the east. Directly east of Beijing is either Korea or Japan, so naturally we'd think of Japan. But how did you pinpoint such a precise location, Sister Jing? Frowning slightly, and Jing replied, because the situation is serious. I used King Wen's hexagram method, which is more complex than plum blossom numerology. Your initial deduction pointed to Japan, and I shared that intuition. Additionally, the top line, the 9th Yao of Wu Wang, is changing. The corresponding earthly branch for this line is Xiu. In symbolic interpretation, Xiu represents imperial capitals and places of strategic prominence. That's how I narrowed it down to Tokyo and the area near the Emperor's Palace. And Liang also recognized the grave implications of the hexagram. Worried, he asked An Jing, how is Sister Yun doing right now? Is her life in danger? In the past, An Liang would never have asked such a question. Anyone who'd had their fate read usually knew roughly when their time would come. He'd always believed his mother wasn't destined to die young. But everything that had happened this past month had shattered that certainty. People who weren't fated to die had perished one after another, while he himself, supposedly marked for death, had somehow survived until today. This forced him to reevaluate every sudden crisis with fresh eyes. An Jing quickly performed calculations on the paper and explained to the group. In this hexagram, the parents' palace is represented by the first Yo, which also serves as the responsive position. This line is strong and flourishing within the chart, meaning Sister Yun has tremendous vitality and may even gain the upper hand at any moment. However, Wu Wang eventually transforms into Sui, a hexagram symbolizing passive submission and following. This suggests the captors will move Sister Yun soon. If I arrive too late, we might lose her forever. And Liang sprang to his feet anxiously. Then let's book tickets to Japan right away. First, we'll go to the University of Tokyo and dig up everything about Rentaro's ancestry. Someone from such a prominent family trying to do something shady would stand out like a sore thumb. We're bound to find clues. Liu Zhongtang crossed his arms and said grimly, but that's still like searching for a needle in a haystack. If they've gone underground, even the police won't find them. And Jing sank wearily onto the sofa. We'll figure it out once we get there. At times like this, we have to try everything. Just then, Liang's phone rang with an energetic rock ringtone. The caller ID showed Elena, the blonde engineer from David Group. Over the phone, Elena gave Liang some news. Word of Danny's death had already reached Wall Street. David Group's stock had plummeted catastrophically that day, dropping 70% by mid-morning. But just before market close, a massive, mysterious influx of capital began buying shares, stabilizing the price in the final 15 minutes. Still, there was no sign of recovery. And Liang knew this was exactly what Matvey had warned him about. David Group's research on resonance machines had nearly drained all resources. For the past year, they'd been kept afloat solely through secret loans and falsified accounts. With both David and Danny now dead, a new owner would swiftly take over, judging by the scale of financial intervention used to rescue the company. This new owner clearly placed great value on what remained, even if it was now just an empty shell. Elena's tone remained unmistakably flirtatious. And Liang couldn't tell if she spoke that way to every man, but her teasing was spicy without being vulgar, and he found it rather appealing. He knew Elena didn't care about the company itself, she cared about her research. For someone like her, the employer didn't matter. As long as funding and interesting projects were available, she could switch jobs anytime. Nor could Liang forget Elena's hidden credentials. She was his professional counterpart. Every David Group project site had been personally surveyed and approved by her based on geographical analysis. Moreover, both research centers 1 and 2 on Jingzhe Mountain were secretly designed using Feng Shui principles. There was only one conclusion. Elena was a geographer specializing in genetics, and she'd deliberately concealed her knowledge of Chinese Feng Shui from him. What concerned Liang most was the Feng Shui layout she'd implemented in her own bioengineering research center, one that consistently prioritized female authority and supported women taking leadership roles in the company. Just how much power did Elena actually hold now? Casually, Liang asked, "Who's this new owner? Are they planning mass layoffs?" New owners usually do that. Elena's voice remained as languid as ever, like a young woman just waking up and lighting her first cigarette of the day. In fact, Elena was rarely seen without a cigarette in hand. "Who?" she exhaled slowly. "The new owner is United America's investment. They're complete outsiders. Forget layoffs, they don't even know who should be fired." "Heh? They think taking over the whole company will magically make them rich. Who knows? Maybe it really will. Liang, where are you? Can I buy you a drink?" And Liang couldn't let her buy him a drink, nor could he let her find out he was in China. He brushed her off, saying, I'm going to sleep now. Any progress on your research? Have you figured out how David died? I've run many kinds of experiments. Low-frequency radiation seems to produce effects closest to what happened, but there are so many types and frequencies of radiation, I think different exposures would yield different results, and David died in the conference room. Why didn't the others exposed to the same radiation die too? That's why I wanted to talk to you. Just seeing you always sparks something in my mind. Oh, and Liang laughed out loud at Elena's blatant flirtation. That really gets me going. Haha. I'll find you before Christmas. To make up for my rudeness, I'll treat you to dinner, and we can talk properly then. What about after dinner? Ha 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 ha, and Liang burst into laughter. He thought Elena was just joking around. Overconfident women like her always believed they could control everything, and loved provoking men recklessly. After dinner, you can decide. If I still don't feel like going home to sleep. All right, I need to rest now. Sorry, okay, good night. Elena hung up gracefully. Can't American dogs enter Japan? And Jing stood fuming at the exit of Tokyo International Airport, dressed in her black nun's habit. It was already 11 at night when she cleared customs. Liu Zhongtang dragged 2 suitcases behind him and slung a laptop briefcase over his shoulder, all hastily assembled by Sheng Weiguo right before their departure. After days of chaos and combat in Malaysia, followed immediately by a non-stop flight to Beijing, and Liang's group had arrived with nothing but the clothes on their backs and their passports barely intact. And Liang rubbed his face in the chilly evening breeze and muttered, "Good thing we sent that dog back to America. If trouble broke out, we'd have to save people, not rescue a dog. Honestly." And Jing huffed, displeased. "Don't forget it was Cuckoo who saved your life in the end." And Liang shot back instantly. "Exactly, so we can't risk putting it in danger again." Liu Zhongtang stretched his lower back as he spoke. Enough. It takes 6 months of paperwork just to bring an animal into Japan. Even if you wanted to bring Cuckoo, it wouldn't be possible. Sending it back to America was the best move. Let's find a taxi and get to the hotel. And Liang mumbled to himself, if only Xiaoxin were here, she'd have everything arranged perfectly. And Jing pouted, looking ready to cry. I miss Kuko. After spending the night at their pre-booked hotel, the 3 of them rushed out early the next morning straight for the University of Tokyo. Founded centuries ago as the Tokugawa Shogunate's astronomical and medical institutes, It had evolved into a globally renowned institution, later focusing more on humanities and becoming the gold standard among Japanese universities. Getting admitted to Todai was practically a guarantee of entry into a major corporation and halfway into Japan's political elite. But stepping onto campus felt like blind men groping an elephant. None of the three spoke Japanese, and the brilliant Japanese students they approached barely understood English. They wrote questions in Chinese, pretending it was Japanese, and the students replied in Japanese, assuming it was Chinese. In the end, neither side understood what the other was trying to say, and they parted ways with mutual, deeply regretful apologies, zan and des, before seeking someone who might actually comprehend them. They also tried scouring the internet in cybercafes for information on the Nagato clan, but the University of Tokyo's archives listed only the names of Nagayoshi Rentaro, his father, and grandfather, with no new records added in the past 10 years. Exhausted after a full day of fruitless searching, they returned to their hotel in Ginza. After a short rest, An Liang dragged Liu Zhongtang out for drinks. Liu hesitantly asked An Jing if she wanted to join, but she sternly refused such debauchery. How could a nun possibly go to such a place? So An Liang forcibly pulled Liu Zhongtang off to Roppongi. He'd noticed this district while researching online. It wasn't that he had excess energy to burn. Rather, he'd learned that after World War II, the US military presence had sparked Roppongi's entertainment boom, turning it into Tokyo's hub for foreign revelers. By nightfall, the area came alive like a dazzling show bars and nightclubs crammed between skyscrapers, neon signs flashing seductively, and the shameless mix of traditional and risque performances running all night. If the University of Tokyo held no answers, maybe Roppongi would. The waitresses here dealt with foreigners daily. Their English was often better than university students. Though the bunny girl sitting beside An Liang turned out to be a student at Todai herself, on stage, a vulgar but lively performance unfolded, a form of folk comedy called Kyogen. A male performer in kimono and wooden clogs sang and danced energetically. An Liang sipped sake and asked Sayako, "Do you work here because your English is good, or did your English get good because you work here?" Sayako wore long floppy rabbit ears and a white swimsuit so sheer it revealed her skin tone beneath. She tilted her head toward An Liang and grinned, revealing two adorable little fangs. An Liang was utterly charmed. He immediately gaped and chuckled. "You're just like a teacher from school," Sayako said. "You're not calling me an old man, are you? I know Japanese girls love teasing Oji-san. Not at all. You remind me of a high school PE teacher." An Liang beamed with relief. "Ah, that's healthy." Whistling through your teeth while leering at girls' volleyball shorts, Sayako burst into raucous laughter, earning herself a sharp, resounding slap on the rear from An Liang. To An Liang's surprise, Liu Zhongtang seemed unusually relaxed in this environment. He asked Sayako, "We're looking for the Faculty of Letters at the University of Tokyo. Do you know where it is?" Sayako glanced at Liu Zhongtang's dignified square-jawed face and giggled again. "Are you trying to sneak into campus to photograph artsy girls for photo shoots? Do I look like that kind of guy?" Sayako tittered gleefully. "Like the guy on the subway hiding behind a newspaper, huh?" Both An Liang and Liu Zhongtang stared at her, confused. "Peeking at girls' short skirts from under the paper," Sayako explained. Liu Zhongtang immediately shouted, "Boss, get us a different girl." "Ah, Yameda," Sayako shrieked, clapping a hand over Liu Zhongtang's mouth. "There's no Faculty of Letters at the University of Tokyo anymore. It's been renamed the Graduate School of Humanities and Sociology." The two men froze in shock. They'd spent the entire day searching for a place that no longer existed. At that moment, An Liang's phone rang again. The caller ID still showed Elena. He answered right away and said, "Good morning. I'm up already." "What's the matter, drinking? You want to go drinking now?" He turned to look at Liu Zhongtang, who pointed toward the back of the bar. An Liang followed his gesture and was startled to see a blonde woman in a tank top and short skirt holding a phone and looking straight at him, a teasing smile on her face. An Liang looked at her and said, "Elena, have you adjusted to the time difference yet?" "No, that's why I'm here. If I get drunk, maybe I'll adjust faster." Elena took a sip from the glass of red wine on the table. And Long's question carried hidden meaning. Anyone flying from the US to Japan would typically need 3 to 5 days to recover from jet lag and sleep properly at night. If she hadn't adjusted yet, it meant she'd just arrived in Japan, which directly tied her to Danny's death. She couldn't possibly claim it was just a business trip. "Who arranged this meeting for us?" An Liang asked as he walked over and stood before Elena. Two young Japanese men sitting beside her stared blankly at him until he sat down across from her. Elena handed each of the two host boys a $100 bill. They each kissed her cheek and left. She put down the phone and said, "Do you prefer geishas or flight attendants?" And Liang replied with equal subtlety, "Do you like men with beards or without?" Elena lit a cigarette, her expression playful yet unreadable. A man with a beard is more of a man. Her eyes drifted past him toward Liu Zhongtang. And Liang understood immediately. She wanted Liu Zhongtang to join them too. Elena's sudden appearance caught An Liang completely off guard. This woman not only had tight control over David Group, but also seemed to know every move he made. In this age, tracking someone wasn't impossible, but for a scientist who usually stayed holed up in a lab, to chase him all the way from the US to Japan just to share a drink? That was far from simple. An Liang picked up a cigarette from the table, lit one for himself, and felt entirely at ease in front of Elena. In fact, acting a little reckless might even suit her taste better. Liu Zhongtong soon joined them. After exchanging greetings with Elena, Liang cut straight to the point. You just got to Japan. Are you here to consult me about Feng Shui or genetics? Elena tapped her ash lightly into the ashtray. We don't have time for that now. Matvey may have been kidnapped by a terrorist organization. The company wants to rescue him, and I personally recommended you for the operation. And Liang feigned surprise. Oh, is that so? Elena seemed unaware that Liang had witnessed Matvey's abduction firsthand, or that he'd come to Tokyo for precisely that reason. She nodded. It happened a few days ago, the same day Danny died. Matvey disappeared. The company suspects he was taken by some group. Couldn't he have died with Danny? Why assume he was kidnapped? Elena narrowed her eyes at him. I never said they were together. How do you know that? And Liang realized he'd walked right into her trap. He gave an exaggerated shrug and a helpless look, as if to say, just a guess. Elena went on. As far as we know, you just flew from Malaysia to Beijing, then rushed straight to Tokyo. Don't tell me you don't know anything about this. And Liang shook his head innocently. I'm just here visiting family and sightseeing. No idea what you're talking about. Elena thought he was playing dumb, but she had no proof he'd contacted Danny before his death. So she continued, Matvey is clever. He managed to transmit a Morse code message via radio to the Lian Valley R&D Center's dedicated channel. That was his project base, equipped with a powerful satellite receiver, so we know he's alive. But we haven't received any further signals. Still, the company has a rough idea of his location. And Liang exchanged a glance with Liu Zhongtang. Both minds raced instantly. And Yun's whereabouts remained unknown, and there were 0 leads from Nagayoshi Rintaro's side. Every additional day increased the danger exponentially. Right now, their only option was to return to the University of Tokyo and conduct a painstaking person-by-person investigation. But if they helped Elena rescue Matvey, they could potentially stop the mysterious organization from using the earthquake machine and might even reunite with Li Xiaoxin. If Jing's divination was accurate, and Yun wasn't in immediate danger. Helping Elena might just be the breakthrough they needed, and perhaps even reveal more about her and what lay behind her. And Liang took a deep drag from his cigarette and exhaled toward the ceiling. Then he asked, when do we move? If you agree, we start immediately. How much? $1 million. Without hesitation, and Liang countered, at least 10 million. Elena let out a cold laugh. Oh, your consulting contract with David Group is only 150 a year. 1 million for a Feng Shui master is already a global record price. And Liang stubbed out his cigarette firmly. Danny and I were close friends. That 150 was the lowest friendship rate in the world. By custom, I get paid monthly, $12,500 for 14 months, plus 1 extra month as my year-end bonus. And I only visit headquarters once a year to assess Feng Shui, which is why my rate hasn't changed in 10 years. Otherwise, how would you afford such a high salary? My personal insurance policy is worth 10 million. All I'm asking American United Investment to pay is equivalent to that insurance premium. By the way, if you were ever kidnapped, how much would you want the company to pay to hire me to save you? Elena burst out laughing. She blew a puff of smoke right into his face and said with seductive charm, You're adorable, I like you, but 10 million is too high. I'll need to check with the company first. She stood up to leave and make a call outside. And Liang called after her. Transfer 20% upfront to my account. All equipment and incidental costs will be covered by the company. Elena turned back with a smile and walked out. Liu Zhongtang immediately leaned in close and whispered, Aren't you going to rescue Sister Yun? Helping her like this is way too risky. Those female soldiers who captured Matvey are all elite agents. We can't beat them. And Liang silently drew a circle in the air with his finger, then spread 2 fingers and pointed forward, signaling that the place was full of eavesdroppers and surveillance. He raised his glass and clinked it gently against Liu Zhongtang's, urging him to drink more and talk less. Elena returned shortly after. The company agreed to an upfront payment of 2 million, but the total can only be 8 million, no more. And Liang instantly brightened. Deal. Our pleasant cooperation begins now. First, I'd like to hear the details. As soon as the advance hits my account, we start the rescue. Here's my account number. He took Elena's phone and swiftly typed in a string of digits. Elena saved the number and sent a text message, then said to Liang, You're really despicable. And Liang took it as a compliment, smiled and nodded. Thank you. It's a great honor to serve you. Elena pulled out from her handbag a Tokyo subway map about the size of a magazine cover. And Liang recognized it immediately. It was the kind freely distributed at subway ticket counters, with bold lines and bright colors. Though over a dozen routes twisted and overlapped, it was drawn like a Japanese manga, so simple even a fool could understand it at a glance. He asked casually, What's this for? Elena took out a marker and drew a small circle in the upper left corner of the map. The target is right here. Liang and Liu Zhongtang leaned in closely. Above the circle was written Gokokuji, below it Waista, and between them Higashi Ekbukuro 4 Chom. Liang pointed to the center of the map, where the imperial palace stood, then slid his finger toward the upper left corner. Liu Zhongtang instantly understood Liang's astonishment. This was precisely the location Jing had calculated the northwest of the imperial palace. The 6th line of the Wu Wang hexagram, through its Naja transformation from Shu to Wei, had already fully indicated this spot, Shu represented both a place of strategic geomantic power and a noble burial ground. Gokokuji was indeed a renowned religious site in Tokyo where many prominent figures were interred. The transformed way corresponded to dry plains in June, perfectly matching the imagery of Waista. Everything had been revealed long ago. It was only human understanding that lacked the knowledge to interpret and see through it clearly. At that moment, Lu Zhongtong no longer questioned Enlang's decision to leave his mother behind. Instead, he listened intently, eager to hear Elena's explanation. Just then, the bar owner, a woman in a vividly colored kimono, approached with a warm smile and whispered 2 words to Elena. Elena immediately motioned for everyone to follow the owner deeper into the bar, into a small room off the corridor. Outside the room stood 2 Caucasian men, one on each side of the door, drinking beer. Enlang and Lu Zhongtong instantly recognized them as Elena's people, most likely bodyguards or enforcers, unless something unexpected had occurred. They entered the room and found it decorated in pure traditional Japanese style, paper walls, tatami mats, and nothing else except a low table barely knee-high in the center. On the table lay a large-scale subway map completely different from the cartoonish version Elena had shown earlier. Elena knelt before the table, her waist curving into an alluring arc. Her slightly loose tank top hinted at restrained sensuality. She pointed just below Gokokuji and said, "This is the starting point of the Arakawa line, less than 5 kilometers from the Imperial Palace, barely an hour's walk. It runs across northern Tokyo 12 kilometers long. What do you think its purpose is?" And Liang studied the map carefully. The Imperial Palace sat at the city's heart, surrounded by dozens of subway lines, mostly arcing in semicircles, starting and ending in different directions, overlapping and layering around the palace like concentric rings. One detail went unnoticed until now, uniquely in the north. A short line, the Arakawa line, stretched from the northwest to the northeast corner without passing through central Tokyo. If he answered honestly, Liang would say it served no real purpose. Right beside it ran the Yamanote line, Tokyo's vital loop circling the entire metropolis, connecting all major commercial districts. Young people used it daily for work and entertainment. Only elderly residents living along the Arakawa line might take it for leisurely strolls in the suburbs. Operating such a line for profit would be nearly impossible. And Liang shook his head. This route is a massive money loser. Unless it's a tourist line, the operator must have jumped onto the tracks to kill himself. Elena straightened her posture and said, "I knew you'd spot the issue. That's why I recommended you for this job. Yes, it's a surface-level tram line with very few passengers. Mostly elderly. Let me add another clue. Both the Yamanote line and the Arakawa line share sections that run above ground." "Huh?" And Liang and Liu Zhongtang gaped in surprise. Liu Zhongtang blurted out, "If subways run above ground, what's underground?" Elena replied bluntly, "Military installations." She lifted the map, revealing another beneath it, far more complex, covered in handwritten Japanese labels. They immediately noticed that about half the routes matched the subway map they'd just seen. But now, radiating from the Imperial Palace at the center, over a dozen radial lines pierced through the 6 or 7 concentric rings encircling the palace. At first glance, the entire layout of Tokyo resembled a giant spiderweb. And Liang gasped, "I always thought the Japanese people loved their emperor so much that they routed all subways around the palace to give him peace and quiet. Turns out there's a massive subway hub underneath," Elena explained. Before and after World War II, Tokyo carried out extensive underground excavation. Under the guise of building subways, they constructed a secret network far larger and longer than the civilian system. After the atomic bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the Japanese grew even more fearful of a future attack on Tokyo, accelerating underground construction without pause. She pointed to several blank spots near the 4 corners of the palace on the map. These are underground military fortresses defending the imperial capital. Whenever subway lines pass these areas, they skip stations or make sharp detours. In central Tokyo, some subway lines run 20 or 30 meters deep. You need multiple elevator transfers just to reach the platform from street level. Other stations sit so shallow they're practically above ground, all to avoid interfering with military facilities. And Liang stared wide-eyed at Elena. "You know secrets this classified? Are you a CIA agent?" Elena smiled. "I'm not an agent. All this came from company files. I don't have time to dig up this stuff myself." And Liang's frown deepened. He spoke seriously. "That's even worse. If you're not with the US government once we finish the job, you'll either silence us or the Emperor will send ninjas to eliminate us." Elena knew and Liang wasn't joking around. He was deliberately distracting her to buy time to think. So she cut straight to the point. "All right, just tell me your thoughts directly. If you don't want to proceed, we can stop right now." "The payment hasn't even cleared yet." Lu Zhongtang, who had been sitting quietly cross-legged the whole time, now rested his chin in his hand and said, "In central Tokyo, they can easily bury subway lines deep underground around the palace. But up north, both the Arakawa line and the Yamanote line remain exposed on the surface. That can only mean the underground structures there are even larger and more critical than in the central district. Running a slow, outdated surface tram like the Arakawa line isn't about nostalgia. It's because whatever's buried beneath can't tolerate vibrations, heavy loads, or skyscrapers built overhead. Driving foundation piles into that ground would cause a disaster." And Liang lightly brushed his newly grown stubble with his knuckles and said, "Could it be a military subway down there?" Lu Zhongtang replied, "No, if it were a subway, the municipal government would open part of it for public use. Even during wartime, they could simply seal it off and requisition it again. That way, operational revenue could help maintain the facility and save the military a lot of money. Plus, if there's a subway underneath, you can still drive piles into the ground above to build skyscrapers, but you can't do that if there's a factory down there. He trailed off, stroking his beard in deep thought. A satisfied smile appeared on Elena's face. She whispered softly, "Bingo, everyone here is sharp, we can move on to the next step right away." The room had no windows but was bright and immaculately clean. Embedded in the walls were screens of various sizes, most were dark, but a few small ones showed street scenes. The simple, orderly streets and uniquely designed Japanese signs revealed this to be an unassuming, quiet neighborhood in Tokyo, Japan. Every street sloped gently up or down, and women in kimonos, wrapped in overcoats and carrying parcels, strolled at a leisurely pace. In modern Japan, kimonos were no longer common on the streets. These women were mostly from wealthy families who, while office workers toiled in their companies, spent their days attending tea ceremonies or meditating at temples. This was Mijiro, located in the northwest of Tokyo, directly opposite and in stark contrast to the bustling central district in the southeast. At the center of the room stood a circular table. Nagayoshi Rentaro sat calmly sunk deep into a plush armchair placed right in the middle of the ring-shaped table. His fingers splayed beneath his chin, his eyes fixed intently on the screen before him. Nagayoshi Rentaro was a middle-aged man with a ruggedly masculine appearance. His short, spiky hair gave him a traditional, unpretentious look, one that seemed oddly out of place in this modern era, almost like a fanatical young militarist from World War II. In truth, he came from a long line of Feng Shui masters. While Onmyo flourished openly in Japan, the Nagato clan quietly preserved their own secret school of Feng Shui known as Kunitokotachi Shinryu, maintaining its proud secrecy behind the veil of history. On the screen, Madvi was busily working with a group of technicians, operating computers, as they converted a small nuclear reactor into a low-intensity particle emitter. Madvi had just been kidnapped by the angels from Malaysia and brought back to this underground lab. On his very first day, he had managed to reassemble a primitive telegraph machine using equipment in the sealed facility and transmitted a distress signal through a weak civilian radio frequency. Such a dangerously resourceful scientist gave Rentaro a constant headache, unless they killed him outright. Forcing Madve to cooperate through violence was nearly impossible. After reporting to headquarters, negotiations with Madve began. Once terms were agreed upon, Madve finally consented to rebuild the low-intensity particle emitter in Tokyo. But this had already made the apostles deeply suspicious of him. Now, Rentaro dared not let his guard down for even a moment regarding Madve's every move. As a Feng Shui master, Rentaro excelled in divination. But in truth, he didn't need any divination to foresee the consequences of Madve's distress signal. The arrival of a rescue team was entirely expected. Divination merely added a bit more certainty to what was already obvious. The Asian Division's underground facility beneath Gokokuji Temple had already become a target. Transferring Madve elsewhere would have been the most logical move, but Rentaro refused to show weakness to the apostles, and he also refused to let all the manpower and resources he'd invested go to waste, leaving him with nothing in hand. Another screen showed Inyun lying peacefully asleep in bed. Rentaro glanced at her image and thought, she's like a grenade with a pin already pulled. Any moment now, rescuers could come rushing in. Yet the secrets hidden within Inyun were intricately tied to Madve's geological research. Moving her now would be just as irrational. At the very least, Rentaro wanted to have a direct conversation with her. The phone on Rentaro's desk rang. The operator informed him that Li Shoshin wished to see him. Soon, a mature and graceful woman entered the room. Her long hair was gathered into a high chignon, and the bangs across her forehead, along with stray strands escaping the bun, gave her an energetic, capable air. Rentaro knew it was only a matter of time before Li Shoshin came to him. Without preamble, he asked directly, "You, what is it?" Yu was Li Shoshin's codename within the Angels. The name Li Shoshin itself was a cover identity created specifically for her mission with the David Group, but she had grown fond of this persona. Li Shoshin glanced at the screens in front of Rentaro and said, "Sir, I'm the oldest member in the Angels. I feel I can no longer perform missions as flawlessly as the others. I want to leave the Angels." Her voice grew softer as she spoke, and by the end, she bowed deeply before Rentaro. Rentaro didn't look at her, nor did he move from between the fingers supporting his chin. He murmured, "Does anyone else know you've had this thought?" "No. This is the first time I've mentioned it to you. You understand this amounts to betrayal? I'm telling you this because you're the finest angel we have. I don't want to see you punished." Slowly, Rentaro swiveled his chair to face Li Shaoxin. "I already noticed something was off during your time at Inyun's house, but I haven't reported it to the organization yet." Li Shaoxin blurted out, "I've always been loyal to the organization and to you. I never intended to betray anyone. I just want to live an ordinary life." As she spoke, Rentaro had already switched on another screen and typed a command into the keyboard. Her photo appeared, accompanied by over a dozen rapidly fluctuating coordinate curves tracking her physiological data. "Your heart rate, blood pressure, and hormone levels are all rising. You're lying and thinking about romantic desires." As he spoke, Rentaro walked to the corner of the room and brewed a cup of green tea. "Come, sit down. Tea helps calm the mind." Like every angel, Li Shaoxin had an electronic chip implanted in her brain that monitored her physical and mental state. What terrified the angels most was that this chip also had a remote detonation function. A single invisible, inaudible micro-explosion would kill any angel instantly, in less than a millisecond. Survival meant obedience, or removal of the chip. Now, she was no exception. Without hesitation, she obeyed like a robot sitting precisely in the chair Rentaro indicated. Rentaro stepped behind her and skillfully undid the hair tie holding her chignon. Li Shaoxian felt a chill run down her spine. Her fear of the brain chip had reached the point of paranoia. On the screen, the curves tracking her vital signs spiked sharply once again. Gently running his fingers through her smooth champagne gold hair, Rentaro said,